Awesome. Thank you, Karen. So welcome everyone to a little workshop I called iWaited. We are going to be discussing recognizing your procrastination, but also once you recognize your procrastination, how we're going to conquer that. Um, so without further ado, I will get started. So this is a little agenda for today I put together. So as I just mentioned, we're going to identify procrastination, talk about just some different scenarios that commonly arise for students, adults, um, perhaps your dog. I don't really know. We're going to crush your procrastination by going through some resources from the Learning Center, as well as other strategies that I have proposed. And then there will, of course, be time for a Q&A. So as we get started, I have a little check-in. And the prompt that I have is, are we surviving, vibing, or thriving today? I know it's kind of midterm season. Maybe it was a long day. Maybe you got to go sledding at Forest Park, enjoying this lovely snow. Feel free to leave your response in the chat. Cool. So before any performance, of course, you need to stretch and warm up. So I have a little warm-up activity for us this evening. I'm gonna copy and paste this link. Cool. All right. You should be able to hear my sound. And we're gonna do a little bit of a warm-up, so feel free to watch.
Meow. Mr. Catman's desk is a mess. What a catastrophe. Hold your pinky on one hand up like Mr. Catman. On the other hand, make the letter L with your thumb and index finger. Meow. At the same time, switch your pinky to the L and the L to the pinky. Slowly at first. You got it? Switch your pinky to the L and the L to your pinky. Try it a little faster. This is possibly one of the most difficult exercises. Why? Because Mr. Catman likes to challenge your brain. But it's all good, because practice makes perfect, for real.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Catman. That was just a little exercise to get our brains present in the moment, maybe firing up some of those neurons that we got. We are gonna get right into it. So before we talk about taking care of our procrastination and recognizing procrastination, we need to define procrastination. So procrastination has been defined as the act of choosing something that is less of a priority in order to avoid tasks that are more challenging. And I think keyword that I have highlighted, this definition, of course, is choosing. So procrastination is a choice. Abraham Lincoln famously said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today." So we will go on. Another part of procrastination is being aware and being mindful. And that is one of the overarching ideas that we will talk about today as far as how to recognize procrastination. So I have a little Zoom chat question. These are going to be scattered out throughout the presentation. Feel free to answer them or not answer them depending on your comfort level. It's totally fine. The question is identify which tasks you typically procrastinate during. Why is this the case? So for me, I'll give a little anecdote. I love to procrastinate, especially after dinner time. Usually I'll have like a lecture to watch or read some notes. I think the reason why is just because I'm not very focused. and I want to just hang out with my roommates. So that is just an example. And I have here that patterns are key. The reason why patterns are key is because once you start to notice a behavior or a time of day that you're maybe not as focused, you can start to key in on that and use some of the strategies that we'll discuss later on. All right, I see there's a lot of chat responses. I do want to get to see what everyone is saying. Let me figure out how to do that. Oh, there we go. Chats. All right. Yeah, so homework. Thank you, Spencer. Yeah, that's definitely something that's pretty easy to procrastinate, but we're gonna definitely talk about how to approach that and navigate that. Watching lectures. Thank you, Danny. Yeah, that's very easy to procrastinate during. Yep, studying. I've definitely experienced all of these for sure. Essays, yeah, that's that's another common answer. So as everyone keeps responding in the chat, I'm gonna go through just some common areas. A lot of these, being mentioned already in the chat, whether it's going to class or right now in this virtual age, watching asynchronous lectures or synchronous lectures even. Starting homework early. I know, Spencer, you mentioned that was an area you commonly like to procrastinate. um, Making appointments with either a TA or an instructor or an advising appointment. These are all common areas of procrastination. And I think just as important as recognizing the tasks that we procrastinate during, we also need to come to terms with the common reasons for procrastinating. One of the reasons that I commonly have is sometimes it's just plain boring. Let's just stare it right in the eye. There are things that we're not going to enjoy learning that we have to learn. And I'm going to get into kind of how I process some of the things I'm maybe not as interested in and make it work for my long-term goals. All right. And then I have another question. Whoa. Sorry about that. All right. So another question I have down here is what are the reasons? What are your reasons for procrastinating? So you've identified, the areas you like to procrastinate. Please feel free to share some of the common reasons. Just looking at this list, or maybe one of your own reasons is also totally fine. So now we're going to talk about identifying the strategies to maintain some momentum while studying and avoid that procrastination. But before we identify these strategies, we're going to talk about some of the common scenarios that people find themselves in um, and go from there. So, a very common scenario students have is I don't feel like doing this, whether it's homework or uh, Nathaniel, whether it's just studying or watching lectures or Keshav's essays. Consider what are your long-term goals. So that's a question that I love to keep in the forefront of my priority list, especially if it's something that I don't enjoy doing. Also, maybe consider asking, how does completing this task help you achieve your long-term goals? For me, for example, there will be, since I would like to be a doctor one day, um, perhaps some of the organic chemistry I'm learning or another lecture or task may not be something that I'm super interested in, and that's okay. I know that in the long run, this is information that I'll have to learn for the future in order to be a successful physician. And that goes hand in hand with the next point that the foundation to anything you want to do is really, really important. Um, and with that, I have a Zoom chat question. What are your favorite ways to motivate yourself? And I see that Spencer's already got a response. Is the due date? Yes, I love that response. I agree. Due dates could definitely be motivating. Going for taking healthy breaks. Okay, I love that. I love that for sharing, Spencer. Um, and as anyone else would like to share, feel free to share in the Zoom chat as I continue on. with a presentation. So another common scenario is not knowing how to sort of study, or don't know how to do well on an assignment or a paper. So here's how we navigate this. Um, you first should definitely seek the help of an instructor, a TA or IA, a tutor, mentor, and friends. And I have copied the link to uh, some resources from the Learning Center that will focus more on academic programs for your courses. And thank you, Karen, for dropping the link to the Zoom chat. Another point to consider when you're not sure quite how to do something is to understand what's expected of you. In a lot of courses at WashU, teachers and professors and staff members they will purposely make you apply material in ways that are not comfortable. And the point of that is to grow as a student and as an individual. But always check back into the expectation for the course, and whether you see yourself, or how you see yourself succeeding with these expectations. There is a lot of research that shows that we tend to overestimate how difficult it is to accomplish a task. So the way I recommend navigating this overestimation is to just start small with small steps, and start now. So being in the present, focusing on what you can do tonight or tomorrow morning to get started on that long-term task or that assignment or studying for that exam during this midterm season. And yeah, experience small wins and build momentum. Amazing. I want to just pause real quickly to see if there's any questions. Feel free to either ask in the Zoom chat, or unmute is also totally fine, whatever is comfortable. And I'll just give it like 10 seconds. Cool. I will continue. So a third scenario that students run into is not knowing the prerequisite information to do a task. And I think that this scenario is really a nice way of saying that something might be too tough. Remember that the Learning Center is always here, and they do have a lot of resources that Karen will continue to share throughout this presentation. But always an email to learningcenter@woostal.edu will connect you with Learning Center specialists who will be able to guide you. For example, Jay, who is the director of the Learning Center, helped me a lot once I reached out to this email. So I do recommend reaching out to the Learning Center. And that goes hand in hand with the next point, is to get help. One of the most common piece of advice I give to students is take advantage of all the resources the school has to offer, whether it's instructors or tutors, even mentorship programs in the school, or friends who you know study hard and are really interested in the material that you're trying to understand. That could also be helpful. One of my favorite resources for getting help is the Dean of the Day. Unfortunately, this is for only the arts and sciences, as far as I know. But this program will guarantee that you speak with an academic advisor basically there's like 2 or 3 every single day. You can get a lot of questions answered as far as scheduling, as far as how to get help for courses, and even just advice for navigating your WashU experience. And finally, when you feel that something is too hard to accomplish, remind yourself of a challenge that you successfully navigated in the past, and perhaps reflect on if there are strategies or resources that you used in the past that could be reused for the present challenge you face. Amazing. So we're going to go on to a fourth common scenario, which is the fear of success. And in this moment, I would like for you to recall a time that you doubted yourself And I have definitely been in that boat, and still to this day I'm in this boat. I think it's really a pretty big human tendency to have some doubts, and that's okay. When you fear success, feel free to leave in the Zoom chat. What are some of the strategies you used? For me, and I know this is definitely not everyone's forte, but I told myself, if I'm true to myself and I work as hard as I can, I'm going to just be confident with what I got. And more times than not, that is my successful tool. Is just staying to the path. And another point for navigating the fear of success is just focusing on the process rather than the result. And this is a term that maybe some of you have heard of called growth mindset. And the idea behind this process is, as we mentioned earlier, finding those small wins to build momentum and ultimately arrive at your end goal through a longer process. And again, just to reiterate, start small and build momentum. The time to start your path to success, whether it's the fear of success or whether it's not knowing how to do something, is now. All right, so I like this one a lot. The fifth scenario is I'm just bored of this stuff, and I've been very guilty of this in the past. So here are some of the strategies that I like to navigate just being bored and not really connecting with material. I love to study with friends, study and or study groups. We'll bring fun snacks. We'll maybe play like music we all like for a little bit, and we'll just divide up tasks. And the reason I like this is it's of course a little bit harder in person now, but maybe over Zoom or another platform is you get to have some social experience, and a lot of times that makes studying easier. And by dividing up tasks, you actually end up focusing, of course, on less material. So you ultimately are able to focus your attention on a small amount of material and have a greater understanding, which, if you're in a strong study group, you'll be able to extract information as well from whoever you're studying with. Another point that I like a lot is relating your material to current affair or events going on. And I think this is really it's really fun to do, especially when you're not as interested in the material that you're learning, because you could easily see how it is relevant to what's going on around you. And then another point, or I'll focus on two more points on this slide. Definitely try office hours. I find that when you're not interested in information, it's sometimes a lot easier to just hear it explained from a professor or an instructor's assistant. And of course, the vast majority of professors want to make sure you know everything and want to explain everything well to you. So this is a strategy I'd recommend. And finally, consider meditation to reset your mind and focus. Even earlier today, I found myself studying on campus, and I was losing some focus just from looking at slides. And I did a 3-minute meditation, and found that my boredom and lack of interest was restored to some focus. So that is another area I would look to. All right, so I know that in the Zoom chat, some of you were saying that you like to wait till closer to the deadline, and that's kind of your motivation. Um, but unfortunately, sometimes this results in us waiting too long to do something, and I call this the big sad. So when the big sad happens, consider why you waited so long to take a task. And sometimes this could just be, personal circumstances, or you're having an emergency, and that's totally fine. But also other times you recall that, you made too many plans during the week and you didn't have enough time to study at night, or you were busy with your on-campus job, or other things came up, and that's okay. Um, but in striving to live the balanced life that we all do, we need to make a plan ahead of time, for how we're going to study for tests, how we're going to complete essays, without destroying ourselves. Um, and a great way to do this is through a planner or a calendar. I use Outlook calendar, and I have all my deadlines, all my exams. Um, I have my all my assignments for the semester, and I even put in like social arrangements, um, office hours, for professors and instructors, assistants. I just have everything in one place, and I find that that helps me see exactly what I have during the week and make a plan for how I will study. And then another strategy for avoiding the big sad is creating a smaller deadlines and goals that will, um, kind of let you build momentum towards that bigger goal within the assignment. So making progress with smaller goals. All right. So we're at about halfway through the presentation. We've gone through all the scenarios. I want to just pause here, and give everyone some space. If you'd like to ask a question, either in the Zoom chat or unmute yourself, that's totally fine. But I'll just, pause here for a sec. All right. So it doesn't look like there are any questions, and that is totally okay. We're going to continue on with our presentation tonight. So we discussed, a lot of the reasons, a lot of the larger reasons why, we procrastinate. It is a natural tendency sometimes, but now let's talk about overcoming your procrastination. We're going to crush it. So, um, feel free to take a screenshot of this template. This template is from the Learning Center resources to avoid procrastination. But I find that this is a really lovely table that outlines, um, your procrastinating tendencies, and give a space for how to navigate your procrastinating. And I will pause on the slide for like 10 seconds just so if you want to screenshot it, you can. And thank you, Karen. Yep, you're totally welcome to download it. And yeah, Karen dropped the link for Headspace I see earlier in the presentation. That's a wonderful resource that I use. You can use it daily. You can use it as needed. I find that it's a really, affordable way for students to address, mental health and just remaining focused in the moment. Cool. So here are some other points to consider for crushing your procrastination. And this goes into making the plan, which I know I brought up towards the end of the last half of the presentation. So predict and expect challenges while implementing your plan. We are at WashU, but more broadly, like we are humans living in the COVID-19 pandemic. We are gonna run into, uh, issues. We're gonna run into obstacles, and that's life. That's okay. But as long as we predict and expect challenges and build in extra time when we need to, that will be okay. That time away from working towards our goals is totally fine. Another point I'd like to focus in on is thinking of the current you and the future you as two different individuals. And think to yourself, what am I doing now? Is it helping or hurting me towards becoming my future self, and act accordingly, after answering that simple question? That's something I ask myself all the time. Um, and finally, practice self compassion. So, research has shown that high stress is correlated to low self compassion levels. And in 2010, there was a study that even showed that students, willing to forgive themselves for procrastinating were able to reduce procrastination in the future. So if you're like me and you love to procrastinate sometimes, just show a little self love, a little compassion. may not immediately solve your ability to procrastinate, but it will certainly help you in the process and in the long run. That is so important to growth and so important to success at WashU and in your future. Another strategy for avoiding procrastination is persistence. And feel free to drop in the Zoom chat what you believe persistence is or what persistence means to you. For me, persistence is literally working as much or as little as I need to accomplish what I want. And I see Veronica's is not giving up. I love that. Absolutely. Merriam-Webster, just to give some inspiration, Merriam-Webster defined persistence as to go on resolutely or stubbornly in spite of opposition, importunity, or warning. Trying again despite setbacks. Yep, I love that, Spencer. Thank you for sharing. We could feel free to keep adding your responses. Samson said, applying yourself despite fears. Yes, I like that a lot too. Thank you for sharing. And just as you consider what persistence is to you, and I think that's the beauty of persistence is it could really have different definitions to all of us. We're going to talk about how to increase persistence. So I think one word that is really nicely goes with persistence is grit. And I see that in Veronica's definition of persistence and Spencer's definition of persistence and Samson's definition of persistence. There is components of grit entailed in all three of those definitions. So to increase grit, you must understand your goals and passion and how the new skills, knowledge that you will learn in your classroom or classes or Zoom rooms directly or indirectly relate to your goals. And I think that is so key to increasing persistence and ultimately avoiding procrastination is understanding what that lecture today, how it relates, that lecture relates to your big picture. Even if it feels like a ordinary 45 minutes, it is building towards the goal. And how, and not just building towards, but considering how it builds towards your goals. Cool. So speaking of goals, a way to increase persistence is to know your short and long-term goals. And those could be professional goals, those could be personal goals, those could be those could have a lot of different categories. So I won't get too far into those categories, but what I will get into is of having a physical record, whether it's on your phone or in your journal, of what you want to accomplish. And just for example, I keep a daily to do task in my journal. I have a tasks for my classes. I write down tasks for my clubs that I'm involved with and organizations I'm involved with. And I also set a personal to-do task that will usually include some sort of physical activity, some form of mental health, self-care, or even writing down who I'm meeting with for the day. And research has shown that writing down your goals and visualizing positive outcomes increases your chances of success. So again, just writing down your goals, both short and long-term goals, really do help visualize conquering your goals and avoiding procrastination in the process. Another way to increase persistence is to find something you're passionate about and motivated by. And that really boils down to the why you complete your daily tasks. For many people, that will be part of the process, the why, or maybe it's that big end goal, the result. So that why for me is that burning fire inside of me that I want to achieve. I want to work as hard as I can and achieve my life's goals. And that only way to do that is through every day setting yourself up for success. All right. So this is my favorite slide of the slide deck. A Another strategy to increasing persistence is to expect challenges and get help. And this is a theme that we've gone into a little bit earlier on in the presentation. But challenges happen, and getting help is totally reasonable. And the ways we navigate these challenges, as Kelly Clarkson likes to say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I totally agree with her. So a lot of times we need to know, for example, what is expected of us, going back to expectation, and applying ourselves in ways that we are going to be challenged. So I have here that you should know what the exams are testing for, and you can know that by talking to your instructor, or someone who has taken the course before, or like a TA or IA is a perfect example, and know how to apply the basic concepts you were learning, and not simply memorize in a lot of cases. And with that, I wanted to raise Bloom's taxonomy, which discusses the certain levels of knowledge that are needed to fully master a topic. As you see here, and the bottom layer is just knowledge, and comprehension builds on that, and application. So you see that we're starting to get higher and higher and higher to the point where you will be evaluated on all this material. So I love Bloom's taxonomy because I feel that it really boils down the different expectations of how at WashU, especially, we must approach our studies, and this is not, again, through simply memorizing, but a lot of times through applying, synthesizing, and analyzing these ideas into bigger ideas. Awesome. So one of the final ways we can increase persistence is by understanding the roots of our procrastination. And by understanding the roots, and thinking back to those scenarios we went through earlier in the presentation, we could develop and plan strategies that will allow us to not procrastinate in the future, and especially when it gets important to not procrastinate. And finally, my favorite form of increasing persistence is self-love. Treat yourself. This means take breaks, routine breaks after 30 to 40 minutes of productive studying, and give yourself rewards for putting in high quality work. I think it's really easy sometimes to get stuck in the quantity versus quality of how you're studying. But I truly believe that a few high quality hours of studying a day outweighs many hours of studying that are not as high quality. So I love practicing treating myself. Some of my favorite ways to practice self love is running, as I know someone mentioned they loved running too earlier. I love ice cream. I love the Muppets, but I think that was just more for fun. And I love seeing my friends and just hanging out. So those are my ways of self love. Feel free to drop your favorite ways of self love in the Zoom chat. Would love for some inspiration. Finally, I wanted to give a little friendly shout out to the Teaching and Learning Center. I am one of the four academic skills peer coaches, and you are able to schedule appointments with myself and the other wonderful academic skills peer coaches through the link that Karen just sent. And we provide one-on-one time for 30-minute appointments where we could provide further suggestions and even help build personalized plans for anyone that wants it. It's another one of the many wonderful free resources at this university. And I encourage anyone that wants to sign up, to definitely sign up with one of the peer coaches. And if not, that's also totally okay too. But yes. So with that, I wanted to just leave it some space to either unmute or in the Zoom chat. Feel free to give input for what type of topics you are interested in learning about more from the Center of Teaching for Learning in the future. And this would really just be helpful for us to understand the interests of the students because we are here for you ultimately too. All right. And also, I am going to transition now to the Q&A. If you have questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself. You're also welcome to just drop questions in the chat. That's totally okay too. Um, and thank you so much for listening. Of course, it's been so much fun to be with everyone tonight, and I hope you're able to take away something from this presentation.